Well, welcome to our third class. Officially, we are studying Koine Greek or Bible study Greek on the most basic level to get us all introduced and comfortable with the use of the language. So today we're talking about Koine Greek pronunciation, understanding the sounds of ancient Greek. And it's valuable to note that every language actually has its own phonetic patterns and sounds. So there's certain syllables and sounds that are utilized in some languages that are not utilized in others. So like in certain African dialects, you'll have that kind of mwah, 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 or they have a click of the tongue plus a voiced click of the tongue or an unvoiced click of the tongue. We don't do that. So that sounds very strange to us. Additionally, like in Korean, which is where I served for a couple years and have this, you know, uh, subtlety of pronunciation between sh and ja and da, and these just gentler consonant sounds and more strict vowel sounds. So that's what we're getting to is kind of baptizing ourselves or immersing ourselves in this idea of Koine Greek and especially the rules to read it properly. Since our goal is not to speak Greek, modern Greek, or even speak Koine Greek, our goal is to engage with the text of the Bible with more seriousness. So we will facilitate or come to that end by our work here. So let's see here. Today, we'll be looking at the phonology of Koine Greek, or the sounds made, right? You got hooked on phonics as a way to describe that. The stress and intonation patterns, and the pronunciation variations. And then finally, we'll look at resources and techniques for learning just to help continue to encourage you as you take this step. And again, I can't say this enough. Language is one of those things that you can't just learn by lecture, right? Much like changing the oil on a car, right? You can be told or even shown a video how to do it, but until you've done it for yourself, you're really not comfortable or capable with that. Going a step further, whenever it comes to learning music or art, you could be told how to do it, but until you start doing it for yourself and making your mistakes and getting comfortable, you're not going to make real progress. So that's really what these early classes are about. They have a lot to take in, but the goal is to take them in at a comfortable enough pace to where you can stimulate them and establish yourself in the study of Greek. So we're going to remind you again, by way of review, about this wonderful Greek alphabet that we get to work with. And we covered this very well, but we're going to be focusing today on that pronunciation. So last week we wanted you to be able to recognize these letters. Now we want you to be able to pronounce these letters or come to the expected vowel sounds. You see, some of them are easy because they fit well with what our English, the English letter they most correlate to looks or sounds like. Others we'll see have a slightly different view. So just by way of review, we're going to rocket through this. This is the alpha. Alpha, because a small alpha looks like that nice little kind of fish, or at least I like to draw it like a kid draws a fish. And then your capital A shape also is the alpha shape, and that pronounces as ah, as in father, father. Again, want to remind you, we're using Erasmian pronunciation, which was a pronunciation that was developed by Erasmus, who had very little knowledge of the way that Greek sounded. And so he did something that's really advantageous for us, and he made sure that it was pronounced with maximal efficiency to be able to recognize those Greek sounds, even though it might not have been how it worked. It works really well for Bible study or for studying what's effectively a dead language. So alpha is ah, father. Please feel free to repeat. I know you're muted. Feel free to repeat these along. So this is beta, and the small beta looks like a B a little bit, but you want to start that from the bottom and swipe down. So up, 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 B. Oh my goodness, you're not seeing my mouse, are you? Let me get my laser pen out. All right, let's see. Come on. Here's my laser pen. All right. So the beta has that nice little, it should be one stroke up and then, up and then down, down. And then you can draw your B normally with a stick. So beta, and that's as in baby. So B is easy, beta is easy. Gamma is difficult or is easy enough because it has something in common with the G, but certainly can be confused with the lambda, looks very similar, but upside down. Gamma makes the G sound, and it looks like an upside down L there. But gamma, G as in gate, hard G. You will not see a gamma that comes up as a as our soft G, like we would have in Gentile or something like that. That's not going to be something should expect. However, if you see two gammas together or followed by another nasal, then it's gonna take that NG sound or N sound, like an angelos, which we'll look at today as a vocabulary word or one of our vocabulary words. Then you have delta, right? Delta is again another single stroke letter in this lowercase. So you see it starting down towards and making the little ball at the bottom is the delta, and that's D as in door. Nice, direct, easy one. Epsilon looks like a funny little E or a little cursive E, but epsilon it gives us that E sound as in egg, egg, right? So we consider vowels in English, we tend to be very loose about our vowels. That is to say, if someone says banana and someone says banana and someone says banana, something like that, we lengthen those. We go, oh, it's talking about a banana. But thankfully, as we study Greek, we'll have more strict observance of vowel values. So egg as in egg, right? Zeta is another single stroke letter. So you want to get that all in one fluid motion as you get better at it. And of course, a zeta capital looks like our Z. And that's pronounced as a Z, maize. Or, yeah, or, zabam, if zabam were a word. All right, eta can be a little bit difficult because it looks like an N, but it is a vowel, and it's that A sound, like pray, right? So it's different than egg, it's A. So it's where it's at in your mouth. And you're using your tongue to make that distinction. It can certainly go away as we speak quickly, but that's how you want to think. Theta is an O with a dash in it, and it gives us that TH sound. We think of that as being two consonants put together to make a th sound, much like the phi, but that is one letter. So every time you see a theta, it's a th sound. Iota gives us that I sound as in fatigue, right? Kappa looks like a K and sounds like a K, so that's good. I mean, we should say a K sounds like kappa, but still, you get the idea. Kappa is in kite, quickly. So no, quickly is a Q. Anyway, that K sound. Lambda, again, you want to think about that in two strokes, one coming down like that and one over here, and that gives you a kappa sound. Cut as in kite, or lambda, sorry, it gives you an L sound as in llama or light or little. Mu is another single stroke letter. So just come up and down, make a little U and give it a tail, right? So that is your mu, and that should dip, this part here should dip below your writing line. So you start below the line, come up and make your U. All right, so that brings us into Xi, which is a weird letter for us to think of as a letter, Xi, x, x, but it's that x sound as in fox. And that's another single stroke. Make a little backwards 3 or however you choose to think of it. Omicron, straight up, little o, big O, as in pot. So if you're looking at your letters, you've got and ah, right? So placement in the mouth is how those are differentiated. P instead of pi, which you're going to be tempted to call this pi, and I suppose when you're talking about math, you should. It's P. So little p and big P as always, hard P as in paint. Rho looks like a P, so that's the confusion point there. Rho is R as in rat. Your sigma has this little ending version, and hopefully you all passed this question on the test, but your S or your sigma sound has a different version only when it is the last letter on the word, which is frequent. In fact, many of the conjugations will end with a sigma as you're going through and learning more about the language. So you'll see a lot of both of these. This is not an exception. It's very rare. It's very common. Of course, your sigma sound. Tau, upsilon. Tau looks like a little T and a big T. That should be easy. Upsilon looks like a little U, I guess, which is fair. It says U as in tune, and it oftentimes is transliterated, as we saw, as a Y. Phi, right, is the kind of the opposite of the theta, if you will, right? It goes up and down. Phi there, up there, and then he, and that's a tough syllable for us because we don't have like when we're talking about Bach or, something like that, we might use it as a loan word, but it's not native to English. Nevertheless, anytime you see that, a soft sound, the wind racing through that short tunnel made by the back of your tongue and the top of your soft palate. He. Psi always looks like Poseidon's trident to me, if that's helpful to you. Little psi and big psi all have that same idea as caps, the sound we make in caps, and omega is a W. Don't confuse it with a W. It's not a W, it's an omega. And instead of the omicron, it makes the O sound, right? So ah, o. That's where you're at. So hopefully you've remembered that. That was very easy, but it's critical that you've got that mastered because as we get into pronunciation and syllabification, you're going to notice. And let me tell you, I've been studying reading Greek for decades now, and I still goof up sometimes. So don't feel bad when you goof up. Don't feel bad if you're pronouncing a new as a V because it looks like it, or you mistakenly, confuse a phi and a theta or something like that. Just roll with it. As we are good, humble humans, we can say, oh, yeah, I'm still picking up on that. All right, so now the phonology of Koine Greek includes a variety of sounds from the basis of its spoken language, as we saw. Understanding these sounds is essential for accurate pronunciation. You might say, why is accurate pronunciation important? Well, accurate pronunciation is important because sometimes pronunciation will affect the sound, uh, the meaning of a word, right? We have that in English. We have words that sound the same but are spelled differently, or words, kind of homophones that have, different similar sounds but different variety of meanings and interpretations based upon certain things. And so that's what you're rocking and rolling with in the phonology here is recognizing that you might have times when a word can be affected in its meaning simply by some of these pronunciation issues. The other reason why you want to get really good, and I'm gonna push this hard. I'm gonna give you a bunch of exercises to get good at this, is that it increases your confidence with the language. Language, as God gave it to us, is spoken. And therefore, by hearing those syllables again and again, getting really confident with it, you're going to wind up with a really positive comfort with Greek otherwise. And if you've probably been in the situation where you tried to use a Greek word and you kind of feel that heat of embarrassment when you say, is that agape or agape? Or what is that, right? Like it gives a lack of confidence in sharing, even though it probably shouldn't cause that. But the truth is that the more confident you are about how to pronounce these words, and it's not that complicated, the more confident you'll be in your Greek study. Mm. Especially as the Lord provides opportunity to share it. And I've never met a Greek student who didn't have an opportunity to share it in Bible study or in as the Lord opens up teaching opportunities and the like. So we see that there are short and long vowels. We established those just a bit ago, that certain ones are expected to have that longer pronunciation versus the shorter one. The pronunciation importance is that proper pronunciation of vowel sounds in Koine Greek is essential because it will change the meaning of words, right? There's going to be a difference between a word spelled with an omega versus an omicron. So even though they might sound similar, it sure helps if we're pronouncing them differently because it keeps us from confusing those words and the difficulty that they have. Grammatical forms, the distinction between vowel lengths can also influence grammatical forms in Koine Greek after affecting sentence structure. So all of these things, even some of the things that we're going to talk about today, that you'll be tempted to say, is that really that important? Yes, it's going to be that important. And putting a little bit of time into it now will save you hours of frustration later. So again, just go through this with us and you'll find that it pays off, in perpetuity. So now we get to talk about diphthongs, which always sounds like a mix of ranch dressing and goofy underwear, but that's not at all what we're talking about. Diphthongs are actually vowel combinations in a letter. We have lots of diphthongs in English, and it's kind of like EA, right? When you see EA in a word, you like, I don't know why Sean is the one that's coming to me, but you recognize that it gives a different vowel than the E and a different vowel than the A, but it's kind of a single grammatical unit in that. So when you see two vowels coming together to produce a new vowel sound, usually kind of a hybrid of those two, we call that a diphthong, and there's plenty of them in Greek and plenty of them in the Greek New Testament. So in Koine Greek, diphthongs add complexity and richness, shaping the language's unique sound. So diphthongs are combinations of two vowel sounds that create a single syllable. Put that on if you need to, if that's a unfamiliar word to you, put that on your vocabulary card list. What is a diphthong? A diphthong is a combination of two vowel sounds that create a single syllable. There are actually more diphthongs than we are going to deal with in this course. We're going to deal with the what are the real diphthongs instead of the grammatical diphthongs. I don't want you to worry about that now, but I want you to be aware that it exists. So here are the diphthongs we are working with. An alpha and an iota together make the sound like as in aisle, aisle. So even though it's AI, it's not A-E, I-E, like you might think. It's aisle, right? Or I as in aisle. So here's your Greek word airo that gives us that sound. It's not airo, it's or airo, it's iro. Iro. I hope you're saying this to yourself quietly to save you time. Next, epsilon iota comes as in eight. And I just, instead of giving you a Greek word, I was obviously not paying attention. I gave you the English word in Greek letters. That's funny. Okay, eight, as in eight. Oh my, pure professionalism here at the Biblical Training Group. Or so epsilon iota is not AE, but is rather eight, eight. I guess it is kind of AE, but it's very fast. Eight, eight, A. Next, Omicron iota comes across as in oil. This word oikia, which means house, oikia, oil, oilers, all that good stuff. Omicron iota. Alpha upsilon comes in owl, as in sauerkraut. You get two of them there. That's like a bonus example. Sauerkraut, it's where we get the word autos. Autos is one of the personal pronouns, or one of the pronouns. So we'll see that you'll encounter that word autos a lot in our study. Omicron upsilon is oo, as in soup, right? So we won't get the OO sound. It makes the OO sound rather, but we won't see the OO diphthong, that we would use to make like, yeah, that oo sound. But rather here, Omicron upsilon makes the word oo sound oo, as in ude, or again in English, soup. Upsilon iota is the we sound, so sweet, or this is the word for sun, it's huios, huios. We'll talk about why that has an H sound on it, but huios, we, all the way home, right? So this is your Three Little Pigs diphthong. Don't forget it. And then we have the epsilon, epsilon upsilon and eta upsilon, both have the sound of u, as in feud, as if we were saying the letter U, right? So euthos and euzonin are the same vowel sound out of two different vowels, or two different diphthongs, one with the epsilon, one with the eta. It shows us that those two are actually phonetically related, and in fact that they're treated the same way. So those are your diphthongs. My recommendation for learning this is to put them each on your on one side of a flashcard, like the alpha iota, and on the back, however you want to notate this, I is an aisle, or you could put the word iro, but whatever you want to do to make sure you're getting that right, right? And run these in their own set. If you want to take my advice, run these in their own set. Just I, a, oi, ah, oi, ooh, we, such and so forth, until you're used to seeing that, because that's something that happens in your study of English, right? Pretty naturally, you're used to seeing, EA or UI or whatever it is, and you used to treat them as a certain phonetic pattern with expectations. And the fun thing is, because of the way we're studying Greek, you're not going to see exceptions in the same way that you'll see in English that can throw us off. So now we get to talk about diacriticals, another great word for your flashcard set. Diacriticals are these different movements that help us understand certain things that are going on within the text. So the diaeresis is the first one, and it's notated as these two little dots over a set of over a vowel that you might think is a diphthong, right? So as we saw before, this alpha iota gives us the I sound, but here we're seeing that it's going to, instead of being hasaias, it's hasaias. So what it does is it's the undo button on a diphthong. It's telling you that this diphthong is not going to be treated like a normal diphthong. In fact, each of these vowel sounds is given its due. So es, s, a, e, us, s, a, e, us, s, which is the Greek transliteration of the Hebrew word Isaiah. Isaiah. So what they're doing with this diaeresis is to break it up so that you won't assume that you pronounce this in its Greek pronunciation, but rather they're trying to get something from Hebrew over into Greek. That's where you'll see this diaeresis a lot. So the next one is elision, and elision is a contraction, very simply a contraction, right? So we have these letters like instead of saying I would, we'd say I'd. I'd rather do this. Instead of saying I have, we'll say I've, right? And instead of saying will not, we'll say won't. Boy, isn't that a magic of letters? Will not, won't. It makes sense to us, so it works. But what you're doing is you're contracting words into a single word, two words or so into a single word. Well, you'll see this in the Greek text a lot. It's not something that you need to concern yourself about heavily. But again, we want to get you confident pronouncing. When I say reading the Greek text at this point, I mean being able to pronounce it and not looking at all the marks and going, what are those? I want you to know what those are. So it's an apostrophe, and it's usually used with prepositions. So whereas most of our contractions we'll tend to think of as the end of a word. For them, it's going to be more in the beginning of the word. So like the preposition like dia or Allah will drop a letter so that you don't have to have double vowel sounds, which is what we do too, right? Of course, but just to point out as a way of example, what's the difference between a and an in English, right? If you talk about, we have a dog, but an animal. Why? Well, because we don't like saying a animal, a animal. It's weird to have to make that stop. So we put that N in, an animal, right? Anytime that the next word starts with a vowel. It's just a little movable N. That's the difference between A and N. And that's kind of the difference between some of these elisions when they've got two vowel sounds running up against each other. They'd rather drop one, shorten that first word, and you get a little a comma, no, sky comma, God's comma. You'll get an apostrophe there, and it'll show you that two words have become one. This is incredibly helpful because as you're looking at the Greek text, you're seeing this now, delta iota that is contracted into the next word. You go, what is that? Well, based on the apostrophe that you're looking for a missing letter in order to identify that word. In that case, it's an alpha, but again, it'll become more natural to you as you go on with your studies in Greek. So, just really briefly as we go through this, are there any questions that jump off right at the bat about diacriticals or diphthongs? I know it probably feels like a drink from the fire hose. You can always go back and listen to this lecture. This is very well described in your book. And I would just say, don't let yourself be intimidated by it. Just keep practicing it and it'll come to you. It's the best way.
I do have a quick question, real quick, if you don't mind.
Jump in there, Jason. What's
Are
up?
all the diphthongs, are they all going to be considered long vowels?
Yeah, I think you would tend to think of them as long vowels, or I would. Isle, eight, oika, yeah, oikia, but yeah, autos. Yep. Yeah, I think you'd call them all long vowels. They're definitely not like abbreviated vowels like the iota sometimes is. E.
Can you pronounce the end one again?
The end one,
Yeah, that one.
feud, as in feud. So it'd be euthus, not euthus or euthus. Euthus, euthus, euthus.
Okay.
Is that good?
Why is hutas? Why is it transliterated with the H?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I'm like dead set on answering that. With our next slide, breathing marks. Okay, so we've got commas and we've got commas, we've got apostrophes of all kinds. Recognize that even though you recognize a lot of these, that they're oftentimes not fulfilling the same function as they are in English. So we saw with the the previous slide, the elision, that the apostrophe was holding a very similar function in terms of contracting two words. But now we see that these breathing marks also look like a comma. Okay, so you've got this here, or a comma. I keep saying comma because I saw in my favorite show they called this God's comma or a sky comma, and I can't get that out of my head. This is an apostrophe. I know it's an apostrophe. You know it's an apostrophe. It's an apostrophe. So if the apostrophe is going this way, it has one sound, and if it's going the other way, which I don't have an example of, it's the other. So um, the we want to note as you were going through your alphabet, even though we had an H-shaped letter, there's no H sound in Greek, which is kind of weird. We could maybe set that he sound and say, well, that's kind of H-y, but the reality is they used a hard breathing consonant in the language. They just didn't have a letter for it as such. And you would know, if you were reading ancient Greek, you would know just based upon how that word is pronounced, and it wasn't considered that much of a hardship on them to recognize when there's an H before a vowel, when there's not. Thankfully, we've got this great system in place that tells us. So when does that H sound come? Well, every word that begins with a vowel, we're going to ask this question: H or no H, right? Shall I H this or shall I not H this, right? I want you to start thinking that way every time you see a word that begins with a vowel. Is this an H? Does this have an H sound on it, a ha that precedes it, or not? And you'll always, this is kind of cool, you'll always be able to answer that question if you're reading from a normal reputable Greek text. So if you would hold up your hand in just this fashion with the left hand up before you and making that sort of apostrophe shape. Notice which way it's pointing, right? As you hold up your left hand. And I want you to say, ha, ha, ha. I mean, I know I can't hear you, but I'm trusting you're saying it. Ha, ha, ha. Anytime the apostrophe is bowed out to the left, if you want to call it that, or open to the right, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Think of it. That's a h sound. You're adding a h to that word. Now, in like kind, hold up your right hand, like Skinnamarink Dinky Dink, or whichever, the Macarena. I'm not sure which dance does this, but hold up so that it's open to the other side, your right hand, and say, ah, ah, ah. Ready? Ah, ah, ah. That's great. So when you hold up your left hand, you're always saying, ha, or ha ha ha, and when your right side is saying ah ah ah, and to recognize that this is going to be your constant clue when you reach a word that is opens with a vowel sound. There will either be a hard H or no hard H, and that's your system. So hopefully that's silly enough to remember when to look for that H sound and when not. Now, I have to warn you that there will be times when you're looking at maybe someone copied and pasted something into a paper or something, and they will not have that hard H or the H marker, the breathing mark, this is called. And don't panic, just do with what you got. And a lot of those words will be familiar to you, and there is a rhythm to it. You start to realize which words will be preceded with an H sound and which ones will not. So this apostrophe will generally be found over the vowel or the diphthong that it's represented. So if you don't see it over that first letter, that if the second letter is also a part of a diphthong, you might see it towards the center, even towards the second letter. But it's referring to adding a rough breathing or a smooth breathing, right? And hopefully that terminology makes sense. Rough breathing is where you cause enough, is it friction or whatever, blockage in your mouth to make where is that? That's here. Trying to think, practicing for when I call someone later and just want to breathe into the phone. But no, not really. The apostrophe will generally be found over the vowel it's representing, and you're looking for that rough breathing where it makes a sound, or the soft breathing. There you go. You did it perfectly. Note that this is different from the elision apostrophe based upon its placement. So the elision apostrophe will generally cut this way, one, and two, it will be more or less between the words. So just, and you would never have a rough breathing mark between two elided words, or two words that have been combined. All right, so now you got breathing marks, which is a big deal. So you're learning a lot. Let's just be really, really, really slow. You've learned about diphthongs, different different vowel sounds that come together, vowels that come together to make a new vowel sound. You've learned about the diaeresis, there's two dots over the word that break up all the vowels into their component sounds. Okay, so the diaeresis, if you don't remember the word, that's not as important as far as the diacriticals are concerned, but or the word diacriticals, it's a fun one to pull out at parties, but you won't have a lot of opportunity under any circumstance. So elision, you've learned about using basically a apostrophe to bring two words together, and now you've got the breathing mark, the ha 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 or the ah ah ah. Okay, very good. You're learning a lot. You're putting this all away, and I'm proud of you. Okay, so now stress intonations and patterns. Understanding Greek stressing and intonation or accentuation, accent, is a key to mastering Koine Greek pronunciation. We all know what happens when someone puts the emphasis on the wrong syllable, as the classic joke goes. Even though you know that word, someone putting the emphasis in the wrong place can cause you not to recognize it. And thankfully, because none of us speak Koine Greek, we have a system for letting you know exactly which syllable is meant to get the emphasis. And that's going to be important because as much as we know the word, certainly agape, right, is God's love or love in Greek, it feels different if you say agape, agape, or agape, right? It's just a little bit weird. And so we can fall back truthfully on the reality that we're not absolutely confident how these things were originally pronounced. However, if we follow the traditions that have been handed down to us, then we will spare ourselves a little bit of confusion and again gain a little bit more confidence in our discussion of Greek. So the rules of accentuation and accentuation in Koine Greek is essential for accurate pronunciation and meaningful, comprehensible language. So what we're going to learn about today in terms of accents are the classic use of the accents as well as the current use. Now, from what we understand at this point, that each of these accents previously had a pitch result. And we know that there are many there are many languages throughout the world wherein pitch, whether you come up at the end of the word or go down at the end of the word, is meaningful to its interpretation or its understanding. We do this a little bit in English, right? Whenever we ask a question, right? If I were to say, should we go to the store? It'd be weird. You expect me to say, should we go to the store? Right? That little rise at the end of your intonation makes it clear that that person is asking a question. We kind of all are used to that. So the human ear is capable of discerning that, and it makes sense if we do it. So the stress accent and the pitch accents are all actually going to be treated mostly as stress accents. So wherever you see one of these accent markers, you're just going to put the accent on that syllable, okay? Nevertheless, I do want you to be exposed to them. So you have this acute accent here, and it's a cute little accent. It really is just adorable. Can't you tell? It's just, oh, so cute. Maybe it's a little head and his nose is coming out. I'm not sure, but it's a cute little accent. It points up. Depending on which way you're looking at it, I think of it as pointing up. So if you were reading along, like a car reading through, you'd hit this and you'd go up and fly through the air. Woo, right? It's acute. That's what would be done to your voice, right? So it'd be ba-ba, ba-ba, right? Something like that, whatever you're going to say. You're going to say apple cart, right? It would go up if the last syllable had an acute accent. Now the next one is a much sadder accent. It's a grave accent. It's actually grave, but grave accent. And the grave accent takes you right down to the grave. So your car is just going along here and comes to this and is shot dead, goes right down into the ground. It's a grave accent. The grave. It was the idea that it goes brings your voice down at the bottom end of that word. And then the circumflex, as you would expect, you go up and down for it. Now, we're not going to use these to their purpose. Part of the reason why I want you to know what they do is not that you'll utilize it, but that they will exist in any Koine Greek text you're reading. And I don't want you to confuse them with something else or wonder, yeah, I don't even know. Why is that there? Well, for them, it was there to give us a sense of whether your voice would go up, down, or up and down in order to communicate the word correctly, or basically pronounce the word correctly. For us, we're going to use it to say that this is the accented accent place. Okay, so now we get into syllabification. And syllabification is this just something that we do naturally. If you were of the era of children who grew up learning to read through phonics, you're used to making syllables, right? And generally speaking, it's your vowels, and then you figure out where your consonants go. So thankfully, Greek is going to syllabify very similarly to how English will syllabify. And so we're going to do one of these. I'm going to do one of these for you in terms of figuring out where these different syllables would come together. And in order to do that, I'm going to move my screen over here as such. Pull this out, and hopefully you can still see, or you can see reasonably well this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Daniel 7:28 from the Septuagint, the Greek text of the Old Testament. We're just going to put little dashes between all of the syllables in this. We're going to go quickly, and then once we turn off the recording, we'll practice together. But ego, the word I, lego my ego, we notice that is a soft breathing sound. So it's not hego, it's e, and you're going to syllabify after the vowel sound. So you might be tempted to syllabify this as egg-o, but that would be wrong. It's going to be e-go, okay? And then here, we're going to go da, that's a delta alpha, and that's where we'll syllabify. Da, vie, el. And since there's nothing following, it's just going to be da, viel, right? Da, viel. This is Daniel. Daniel. Oh, man. See what I said? We goof up. We all goof up. That is a new, not a V sound. Da, niel. Da, niel, right? Now, this is kind of a hard one because we've got the sigma and the phi here, making a svol, right? And we might be tempted to say svodra, but we're not going to say svodra. We're going to say svodra. Svodra. And then we've got extas, extasai, 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 extasai. See? Easy peasy. Obviously, this takes us to our first one. Pet. Oh, shame on you. Okay, we're going to just have to deal with that. Pet. Now, here's a tough one. You got a diphthong plus an extra iota. Pet ye home. There we go. Home. Oops. Ho main. Okay. So you notice you're pretty much trying to, this is one syllable, kai, the word and. This is a, right? But we've got that breathing mark, which means it's what? Hey. Good. And then we've got another breathing mark here in exis, but it's not exis, it's hexis, not the skeksis, although nobody probably saw Dark Crystal but me. That's okay. So, hexis, right? Mu. Die. That's not one of our diphthongs, right? Iota, eta. So that's die. And you've got even an accent. Die, ne, ken. See, again, that's one of those where the gamma hits the kappa. Moi. Kai, ta, single letter words. Ooh, look at that. Every row gets a hard breathing sound. Frema, 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 which is a little bit weird, but it's the word for word. Pre, because there's a sense of that hard breathing in an ER. Pre in the Greek pronunciation. Pre, ma, and ka, dia, dia, ka, dia, ka, dia. Alpha gets its own syllable there. Mu, excuse me, mu, single syllable. E, ste, ri, za, esteriza. So hopefully that's not too opaque. If you were to syllabify wrong, you're not going to kill, end the world. But what it does is it helps us break down words into their components for easier pronunciation. Very regularly, if I'm teaching and I've got my notes, and if there's a big long compound word, sometimes of 4 to 6 syllables, I will break it up, syllabify it because it's easier to pronounce, and I won't get all kind of gummed up in the little bits of it. So
I have a
syllabification,
question.
jump in there.
You keep saying the P. I thought the P was an R.
That is an R. Prema.
This one down here.
Frisa. That one? Oh, sorry. Hold
This
on. I've
one.
got it.
The K,
I
the
can't
next to
quite
the
see
last
where
word.
the
That
last
one.
word. Yeah, that
The
should be
next to the last one.
next
Next
last
to the
one.
last
Mu.
one. Back
Okay.
again.
Back again.
Back. There. That
Cardia.
cardia. I
Ka
thought you
is the word for heart. So I might have said P again. I do make mistakes, but ka
okay.
rdi. Oh, you know what? It might have sounded like that because, like I say, this is probably an easier way to think about it, even though I think it probably officially be told you to cardia,
Okay.
cardia, cardia. But see, and here's our accent, so it's cardia instead of cardia or something like that. Good. Thank you for that. Good question.
Hey, Brad.
Jump on in there, man.
I think you mentioned it, but that word die, ne, inkin, that gamma kappa,
Which
that's
line?
one of those. The second line, the keep going to the right, die, ne, right there. Yeah, that gamma captor. Remember, guys, that was that gamma nasal we talked about last week, where the gamma changes to an N sound because it's before the kappa, and it's just one of those rules you got to learn to recognize that that'll be a gamma nasal. So it serves as an N there, N sound. And if you struggle with some of these, Blue Letter Bible does a great job of their pronouncing them, whether they're 100% right. But it was like, I have no idea to pronounce it. Go to the Blue Letter Bible and try to, figure out the letters and put it in there, and it'll help you pronounce it. It does a good job.
So just for,
Absolutely.
just for clarity, so the gamma nasals for double gamma and then gamma kappa.
Yeah, it's gamma gamma. If it's gamma kappa, gamma C, and what's the last one? Gamma chi.
Hmm.
It's
Yes.
on. If you look on page 9, that 2.10, it's in their book. There's 4 conditions, 4 letters that it serves as.
I must have skipped right over kappa. Thank you
That's good.
thank you for the clarity.
Absolutely. Good job. Okay. So we'll come back and do some of this practice together and get to wrestle some of that out as a team once we're off camera. The last thing or not the last thing, but the next thing we want to talk about is punctuation, which punctuation in Greek uses similar or familiar markings, shapes to ours, but use it differently. So a period above the line, and you'll see this, like a period as it comes to the middle of a sentence, whatever it is, it'll hover in the middle, and that's their version of a semicolon, right? So it's the comma and the period. So it's a way to break up a sentence without ending it. That's a period that is above the line, towards the middle of the line. An English semicolon, the dot and the comma, is the Greek question mark. So if you see an English semicolon, just know that is indicating that what's being said is a question, okay? With a dot and a comma underneath the semicolon. And finally, periods and commas look the same from Greek to English. So when you see a period or a comma in its normal place, then it's going to be holding that function. So I'll just say it again because I can't think of a better way to drive it in at the moment. A period above the line is a Greek semicolon. An English semicolon is the Greek question mark, and periods and commas look the same. They look identical. So just write that down again, throw it on a card so you can kind of like keep it fresh for a little bit. And then once you start encountering it in the Greek text, it'll make all the sense in the world because it's not all that difficult. Okay, so obviously Koine Greek moved in regions or changed in regions over time, just like English, right, has kind of pidgin forms since it is one of the lingua franca, if not the lingua franca of the world right now. There are pidgin forms of English in various places wherein it's still English, but it has quite a bit of variety, kind of dialectic variety based upon the language that it's interacting with or that it's working, being influenced by. So Greek was the same, and we'll find that recognizing these different influences isn't much of an effect on us because we are chiefly looking at the type of Koine Greek that has been influenced by Hebrew and Aramaic culture and language development. So we'll see a lot of Hebraisms and a lot of different influences on Koine Greek of the Bible based upon the relationship that it has to both Hebrew and Aramaic. So we also note that Latin had a big influence on it because, well, Greek was the main functioning language of the world at this point, thanks to Alexander the Great, as I think we saw last week or previously. But even with that being the case, Latin was still the language of the Roman Empire. And so Latin had a huge impact on Greek during this time for that purpose. So these are pronunciation exercises that we'll come back to later, but we'll just give you one quick example before we work it together. So this is here is your accent. So it wouldn't be technia, it'd be technia, mu. Tauta, right? Here's your circumflex. Tauta, not tauta. Grafo, humin. Here's your hard breathing mark, right? It's not umin, it's humin. Hina, graphic, shows your breathing mark, plus an accent, a cute little accent here over the he. Hina, hina, hina. Me, the accented grave. Here's another hard breathing. Hamartete, te. Kai, aeon. This is not, even though it looks like it's it might look like a diphthong. We treat it as aeon instead of een. Aeon. Tis, hamarte. Parakleton, ekomen, pros, ton, patera, Iesun, Christon, dikaion. So I realize that it may be of questionable help just to see me pronounce this, but I'm trying to demonstrate how I want you to do it as well. Take your time, take it one syllable at a time. Look at all those markings, ask, what does that marking mean? Okay, that means that this is the accented syllable. What does this marking mean? Okay, that means that I'm going to have a hard breath before that. It's the only way I know to get better is to look at example after example. Now, in your on the website for the class, we've already got all of the first chapter of First John printed up for you with should have all the markings in it for you to be able to follow. And I would encourage you, if you don't have some other way to access, good Greek text from the Bible, just print that out, fold it up, carry it around with you, and whenever you've got a moment to yourself or a moment to do so, just keep rereading through. If you can get used to hearing and even memorize the phonetic sounds, just like you can learn, songs in another language without speaking that language, just by memorizing the phonetic sounds, getting used to hearing those sounds in your own voice is really, really valuable. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, guys. Practice, practice, practice. Open up any text, Greek text, and read. If you have a Greek, first of all, you have your Greek book, and as you go through it, you'll notice that there are plenty of little Greek readings and Greek sections that you can read and pronounce. Like I said, if you open up your Bible, whatever Bible application you're using, oftentimes it will have a Greek text, or you can go to Blue Letter Bible and see the entire Greek text of any passage that you want to, and just pronounce, practice, practice, practice. Both when I was learning Greek and Hebrew, this was the secret to any level of success I've achieved, is that I sat down for 15 minutes a day, most every day, if not every day, and just would read for 10 or 15 minutes, not even understanding necessarily, but just pronouncing and getting comfortable pronouncing these words and listening for the flow of it. Because that's one of the things that is most interesting about reading Greek, is that, as you become comfortable hearing it and seeing it, you'll hear the phonetic patterns and some of the things that are going on there, like the alliteration and onomatopoeia and stuff like that will start to come out to you. So anyway, yeah, practice, practice, practice. So just some notes on resources and techniques for learning. One is understanding pronunciation. Really drive this in. Spend that extra time here. If you have a partner, pronounce it for them. If you're brave and you want to do it, pick a text and read it into a recording and submit it to me. You send me an email of that audio, and I will critique your pronunciation, not mean-spiritedly, of course, but I'll be happy to listen to it and critique your pronunciation, just so we can know if you're goofing up any certain sounds or maybe getting them wrong as a pattern. And audio recordings are available. You can actually find the entirety of the Greek New Testament read in the Erasmian style online. If you type in audio Koine Greek or audio Greek New Testament, there's a wonderful gal who actually, she was passionate about her Greek study, and she found out she was losing her sight, and so she took to, on old cassette players, making sure that she could pronounce it clearly and slowly, so that even if she went, as she was going blind, she would be able to access the Greek New Testament, right? Because no one could just read it to her necessarily. So audio recordings online for the Koine Greek pronunciation are also available at blueletterbible.com. So if you're questioning a pronunciation, just find that word, look up that word, and you'll get a audio file for it on Blue Letter Bible. Yep. So just mimic those correct sounds. You're not going to learn language in your head. You got to get it out. You got to practice it out loud. You got to get over whatever shame or fear or frustration or embarrassment that you've got there. Next, we got practice exercises in your book that we want you to take seriously. As Matt said, it might even be fun or worthwhile to run copies of them so you can do them twice if you're so inclined, especially if it's something you're struggling with. Using linguistic tools and building confidence through practice is the best way to get this done. So this is not about how smart you are or how smart you aren't, how quickly your brain works or how great or not great your memory is. It's simply about grinding. It's about just doing it again and again and again until it comes. So with our final moments of our recorded class, we're just going to look at the vocabulary words. These are words that you are going to see between hundreds and thousands of times in the New Testament. And so you're not going to memorize as much as you will in full Big Greek 1. But if you get these words out, they will pay out in spades. So the first one you want to learn is logos, which means word, statement, message. Basilia, notice the accent on the end there, is kingdom. Basilia Eranos is the kingdom of heaven, so forth. Now we see that double gamma, which makes it not agalos, but angelos for angel or messenger. Kurios, which is Lord, Master, or Sir. Iesus, which is the Greek relation of Jesus, which is Yehoshua or Yeshua. So it's Jesus in Greek, Yeshua in Hebrew. Christos. Wayne, jump in. What's up, man?
I was just curious. It's been really boggling my mind. It's like Jesus for Jesus usually has the sigma, but whenever I go to 1 John 2:1, it spells Jesus different. It ends it with a
Oh, it's conjugated. Okay. So yeah, this is a great point. Each of it's declined, actually, not conjugated. Greek differs from English in that words will change their form based upon their function in a sentence. So we use syntax. So the boy hit the ball and the ball hit the boy. The only reason you know who's doing what is because of which one I said first, right? The boy hit the ball means the boy did the hitting. The ball hit the boy means the ball did the hitting, right? Fair enough? Easy. So in Greek, it is different as a language because it is actually going to change the form of the word so you know what the subject is. The ending of the word is going to be changed in order to designate what the subject is, what the object is, what the direct object is, and so on. So as you encounter these words, you might see instead of kurios, kuriou, right? And each of those, I'm trying not to go too far into this, but that means that the function of the sentence is the same. So the root word, log instead of logos, or basil instead of basilia, and angal instead of angelos, is going to be where they change. So when you encounter these words in the text, don't be surprised if they have different endings, sometimes even different prefixes, but let's focus on one thing at a time, I guess. So excellent question. Excellent question.
I noticed that they spelled Jesus with iota, eta, sigma, omicron, upsilon, and then nu.
And
So it's like I was wondering how they got Jesus out of that.
Exactly. And so that is showing that Jesus, so because Jesus could be the subject, the object, the direct object, the indirect object. And so with the system of declension, you change the word to say what function it's filling in the sentence. So great observation. And by the time you're at the end of this course, you'll have a thorough understanding of why it changes. And at the ending of the next course, or actually a couple courses down the line, you'll be able to decode it as to what those changes mean. So great question. Thank you very much, Wayne. Moving on, Christos, Theos, which is Christos, which is Christ. So you get Jesus, Christos, Jesus Christ, and Theos, God. You've got all the important words. You're just one set of words short of the whole Trinity. So that's great. It's exciting stuff. You notice here, weos would be weos, but here's your rough breathing. Weos, weos. Weos is son or descendant. Soter is the word savior. And if you're a systematic theology buff, then you already know the word soteriology, right, is the study of salvation. Soter is the savior. Soter, soter. And ha. This is the most common word that you're likely to encounter. 19,822 appearances in your New Testament. If you know this word, now this is going to change significantly the definite article, the word the, as it's being applied. Lots of rules about that. Don't sweat it, but just realize ha, the word the, puts you in contact with about 19,000 or almost there's 20,000 instances in there. So put those up on flashcards. Use whatever online study tools are available to you. Write them down. For me, that was always it. Writing it out. Logos word, Basilia kingdom, Basilia kingdom. Okay. Basilia. There we go. And now I hope you agree or have come to understand the importance of punctuation and the reality of why it is valuable to understand all that as you go forward. Your phonology exploration, understanding how these letters work together, and finally the resources that are available to you for learning. And with that, stop my share and I'll end the recording.